And it is time that we go up north to a man who brings you the energy and brings you the knowledge. Will Ragatz, look at him, ready to rock and roll for us here on the CHGO Bears Podcast. Veteran Vikings beat reporter. He's also doing covers for BMTN Sports up there, Sports Illustrated. And you know what? When I was looking at who could come on today to talk Vikings with us, the man's a Northwestern University alum. He's fired up for the Cats in Pepperdine on Friday night. He can't wait for the Cats to go up to Michigan and take out the Wolverines. Right, Will?
Yeah, I'm going to the Pepperdine game on Friday night. At least I'm planning on it. So that should be fun. I haven't been to Welsh Ryan in a long time.
All right. Well, you best come by and say hello. I will be there working hard and perhaps having a cocktail on the side as well. But well, it's gonna be a good night. All right. Well, 8-2 are the Minnesota Vikings in your mind? Let's just start there. Do you believe them to be a Super Bowl contender? Would you go that tall?
It's hard for me to go to that level just based on the last 3 weeks of beating AFC South teams in relatively uninspiring fashion. I mean, they scored a combined 3 points in the first half against the Colts and the Jaguars. Last week, a little bit less stressful against the Titans, but still not an easy game by any means. The defense is really, really good. The pieces on offense, a lot of them are very, very good, starting with Justin Jefferson. But do I believe in Sam Darnold as a Super Bowl caliber quarterback? I'm not sure I do. I think there's a chance that they can get there if they continue to improve over the last couple months of the season. They're in a great spot to get in the playoffs and give themselves a chance, but they haven't been beating up on bad teams the way like the Lions obviously have. And the Vikings hung with the Lions back earlier this season at US Bank Stadium. So I don't want to say that they can't beat Detroit, but they're not on that tier right now.
Well, you mentioned that Detroit game. I think it was back-to-back weeks where the Vikings only 2 losses, Rams, Detroit. Mm-hmm. Is there any common denominators from those 2 games that you look at that translates that maybe if the Bears were to win, they have to do this? Does anything translate there?
So the 2 things that were, well, I guess the one thing that was the main concern over those 2 losses was just the pass defense giving up a lot of yards. And that's 2 great offensive minds, Ben Johnson, Sean McVay, 2 great quarterbacks in Goff and Stafford, with Stafford getting back Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp at the same time in that game. So they got beat a lot over kind of the in-breaking routes over the intermediate area, middle of the field. One thing that's interesting is they didn't have their top linebacker, Blake Cashman, in either of those games. They're 7-0 when he's out there. I don't know how much of a difference he necessarily would have made in those losses, but the concerns with the Vikings, the things that can beat them are giving up yards through the air when the pressure doesn't get home, because they can get home with the pass rush with the best of them, with Brian Flores dialing up blitzes and their edge rushers. But when the pressure doesn't get home, the cornerbacks are fine. They're not great. The interior defensive line is not great. Not really any pass rush there. And then on the other side of the ball, obviously, it's going to just come down to Sam Darnold taking care of the football. He had 3 turnovers against the Colts, 3 turnovers against the Jaguars, 3 interceptions in that game. So as long as he takes care of the football, it's a good offense with Kevin O'Connell. But those are the 2 main concerns. And if there's a path to the Bears winning, which there certainly is, I think the Vikings are 3-point favorites or something like that. It's moving the ball with Caleb Williams and this new offensive coordinator, and then it's coming away with a couple takeaways against Darnold.
So I don't know if you're aware, Will, but we're in a little bit of a coaching search preliminary here in Chicago once again. Can you underline what, in your mind, Kevin O'Connell does so well?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I think it starts, and he said this in his opening press conference, and a lot of people rolled their eyes, but it's the culture that he has kind of put in place, and that really had soured in 2021 under Mike Zimmer. The vibes in the building were not great, and people might not think that really matters, but I think it does. I think there's something genuine about it. Everybody loves O'Connell, all of his players, everybody in the building. He is a great leader. He's a coach who can relate to players, a former player himself, who people want to play for. And he comes off as this nice guy, but I think he can also really get into his players when he needs to as well, and hold them accountable. So I think it starts with that, and then just a really good offensive mind. I think the head coach quarterback relationship is so important in the NFL. Mike Zimmer and Kirk Cousins never really had one at all. And they cycled through so many offensive coordinators during the Zimmer era. But O'Connell, whether it was with Kirk Cousins the last couple of years, even Josh Dobbs last year, Nick Mullins, and now with Sam Darnold, and then in the future, JJ McCarthy, he's just really good at getting the most out of quarterbacks and helping kind of play to their strengths and put them in positions to succeed. And I think you've seen that with Darnold having the best year of his career, turning his career around here in Minnesota. And I think that's why people are so optimistic about what this thing can look like beyond this year with JJ McCarthy taking over.
I would say Kevin O'Connell is also pretty good at getting the most out of Aaron Jones, who's a newcomer to the Vikings this season. And he's been somebody when the Bears see Aaron Jones, bad things happen. What has he meant to this Vikings offense? We all know Justin Jefferson's going to get his, but Aaron Jones, that rushing attack, what has that done for the Vikings team this season?
Yeah, that's been huge to have that complementary aspect. I mean, the Vikings couldn't run the ball at all the last couple of years. One of the least efficient running games in the league. That was kind of washed Dalvin Cook in 2022, and then the Alexander Mattison thing last year just did not work at all. So they were really excited when they had a chance to go get Aaron Jones, and he's kind of changed the game for them and made it so they don't have to be such a one-dimensional team. And teams can't just kind of play light boxes and focus all their attention on stopping the passing game. The run game has been up and down for the Vikings. Last week, part of the reason they didn't beat the Titans by more is they only ran for like 64 yards on 25 carries with Jones and Cam Akers, who's mixing in quite a bit as well these days. But for the most part, that's been a big addition, and they're going to need Aaron Jones. I mean, I haven't watched the Bears as closely as you guys, obviously, but the metrics say that you can run on this Bears team. So I imagine that'll be a big part of the game plan for the Vikings this week.
So everybody knows, obviously, that Justin Jefferson and Jalen Johnson matchup is going to be fascinating and a ton of, always fun to watch. Jordan Addison's numbers are down here from last year. Will, can you shed light onto why that is?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think part of it is that they've been running the ball a little more and not throwing it quite as much. There was also a 7-game stretch last year where Addison was the number one as a rookie because Justin Jefferson was out. He had his career game against the 49ers last year with no Jefferson. I think there's also just been opportunities on tape for Addison. I don't think he's taken some wild step back as a player. I think he's open a lot and he just sometimes isn't getting the ball. And for whatever reason, Jalen Naylor has gotten some of those looks, and guys like Josh Oliver, their number 2 tight end, TJ Hawkinson's now back from injury. And then Jefferson, I mean, he's the number 1 read on basically every play. And even when he's getting a ton of defensive attention, the ball is still going to come his way quite a bit. So Addison also missed a couple of games. He's had a few nice games here and there, but the volume hasn't really been there. But still, as a number 2 piece, I mean, we just saw last week what he's capable of doing. Cut a kind of dagger route and took it 47 yards to the house. He's still dangerous if you're going to really sell out on Jefferson and leave him against single coverage.
Yeah, that's why it makes it so dangerous with the Vikings offense. But looking at their defense, Andrew Van Ginkel, like a guy that has 8 sacks on the team with the Vikings defense that can all get to the quarterback, but guy that was obviously familiar with Brian Flores. What has he meant to this defense? When you watch him last week against Tennessee, dude was everywhere on film.
Yeah, he is just the perfect piece for Brian Flores. And I mean, you said it. He played with Flores in Miami, and I think that's just such a natural fit because he can do everything that Flores wants his outside linebackers to do. It's not just straight up you're rushing off the edge every time, go get to the quarterback. It's sometimes you'll be on the right side, sometimes you'll be on the left, sometimes you'll be rushing up the middle, sometimes you'll be dropping into coverage. Sometimes you'll be, playing run defense, and you got to set an edge in that regard. And Van Ginkel can do all those things. I think he should be getting a little bit of sneaky defensive player of the year buzz because he's got the 8 sacks. He's got 2 interception returns for touchdowns this year, which it's a very short list of people who have done those 2 things in a season. I will say too that the Vikings signed 3 defensive free agents this offseason. Andrew Van Ginkel, Jonathan Grenard from the Texans, who's one of the NFL's leader in pressures, and then Blake Cashman, the middle linebacker who I mentioned a little bit earlier. Those have been their 3 best defensive players this season. I mean, they've got some good holdover pieces, Harrison Smith, Josh Metellus, guys like that, Ivan Pace, but the 3 free agents have been their 3 best defensive players pretty clearly. It's just been it was a really successful offseason to bring those guys in and take this defense to another level.
Why didn't they keep Denil Hunter? The guy's got, I think he just sacked somebody else right now, or is in the backfield. He's had a hell of a year.
Denil Hunter is a very good player who they liked a lot, but I think it just kind of came down to the cost. I mean, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I think they're probably paying Grenard, Van Ginkel, and Cashman, those 3 guys I mentioned, about as much as Hunter makes by himself. So it's just kind of how you choose to use your resources. The Vikings this year have a lot of dead money on their books with the Kirk Cousins contract and a couple others. So they chose not to pay Kirk, obviously, with what the Falcons ended up giving him, $40+ million a year. And then they chose not to pay Denil Hunter. And I think that's worked out really well for everybody. I mean, Hunter is thriving in his home state with the Texans. Great player. But then the Vikings, in almost a pseudo trade, they get Grenard, who was with the Texans last year. He's been an unbelievable fit for them. He's a really, really, really good pass rusher with a nasty spin move who can also defend the run. And then they pay Van Ginkel, they get Cashman, they get Aaron Jones, Sam Darnold. Like they use their free agency money on a bunch of different guys instead of choosing to re-sign Cousins and Hunter. And it's hard to say it hasn't worked out when you're sitting here at 8-2.
Well, there's been a lot of talk.
Fair point.
Yeah, very fair point. There's been a lot of talk about field goals here in Chicago and maybe blocked field goals, but I think people
remember the second down kick back in the day? No.
Yeah, that too. We try to forget about that one. But John Parker Romo coming in 5 of 5 on field goal. Like, what is to have your starter go down and then to get somebody else to go be perfect at the season? What does that mean for this Vikings team right now?
Yeah, it's been big. They love their rookie kicker, Will Reichard, 6th-round pick out of Alabama. He hadn't missed his first 7 or 8 games of the season or something like that, and then he ended up missing a couple against the Colts. Turns out he was hurt, so he's on IR. They bring in this guy, Parker Romo, who was with them in the offseason, and he's done the job so far. He did miss an extra point last week against the Titans, but perfect on field goals. He made 4 of them, which was all their offense against the Jaguars. So I think they feel pretty good, but it might change the calculus a little bit. We haven't seen too many of these decisions come up, but if it's try a 56-yard field goal or go for it on 4th and 5 or whatever, I think with Will Reichard, they feel confident in those. I'm not sure if that'll be the case with Romo, especially in a place like Chicago, but we'll see.
Vikings have a 3-game homestand coming up here after, coming down to Chicago on Sunday. Still got to play Detroit. Still got to play Green Bay. If I had to, and we appreciate the time we're up against it here, but just real quick here, if I had to tell you, you can, I got a pot of gold for you. I got big money to go in your wallet. You're either betting that the Vikings make it to, let's call it the NFC Championship game, or they don't make the playoffs. Which one would you take?
More likely is they make it to the NFC title game. I mean, their playoff odds right now are like 95% if you look at a DVOA. I think those are kind of two extremes. I struggle a little bit to see this Vikings team winning 2 playoff games, which I think they're going to have to, because I don't think they pass the Lions in the North. It's looking like the script writers might end up getting a Vikings at Atlanta against Kirk Cousins 4-5 wildcard weekend matchup, which would be very winnable, but then you'd have to go win another one to get to the title game. So, but I think of the 2 options you said, that's more likely. I don't see this team missing the playoffs. Obviously, crazier things have happened. They could fall apart, but I don't see it happening with this defense.
All right. Will, appreciate your time, man. Thanks for jumping on Short North, the whole thing. We appreciate it, man. Hope to talk to you again.
Yeah, thanks. Go Cats.
Thanks, Will.
There we go. Go Cats.
We all silly like the mayor.